Hello there. Welcome to Papa Nick's Music. I am, as always, your host, Papa Nick Lewis, and today we're talking about the Monkees. When I first started thinking about doing these album ranking videos, there were a few artists that I knew I wanted to do. I wanted to do the Beach Boys, check. I wanted to do Kiss, check. And I wanted to do the Monkees, check. So, like most people my age, roughly, I became aware of the Monkees when their TV show was rebroadcast on Saturday mornings, early 70s. And I loved the show. I loved the comedy. I loved the chemistry of the four guys. And I really liked the music a lot. And over the course of my childhood, I saw most of the episodes of the show, if not all of them. And so each show had, a couple of songs in it. There are over 50 shows, so that's a lot of music, right? So I was aware of the Monkees, but it wasn't until the 86 resurgence. In 1986, MTV started showing the Monkees as part of the 20th anniversary of the beginning of the show, the first airing of the show. And for a brief moment there, the Monkees became very, very popular as a result of the MTV play. Rhino Records re-released all of the old Monkees albums, and I started snapping those things up. And I realized, as much as I liked the hits that I was familiar with, I really liked the rest of the stuff as well. So I'm a huge fan of the Monkees. And it is really tempting, oh so tempting, to start talking about the story of the Monkees and everything that went into the formation of the Monkees and what they went through as they were recording and all of this stuff. I could easily sit here for a couple 3 hours and just babble about the Monkees. I've got a little sticky note next to my camera reminding me to stay focused so that I don't do this. So as fascinating as the Monkee story is, we're just going to sidetrack it. We're just going to very quickly run through the albums, and I'm going to put them into some form of order. But I do want to very quickly dismiss the most common criticisms I hear of or have heard of the Monkees. Common criticism number one. Oh, the Monkees, they're just bubblegum. I mean, first off, no. They recorded a lot of music. And yeah, a lot of it is bubblegum, but not all of it is bubblegum. There's a lot that's not bubblegum. There's just a lot of good, well-crafted pop in there. But even if it were entirely bubblegum, labeling it as bubblegum is not a legitimate criticism. To me, if I hear somebody say, oh, the Monkees, they're just bubblegum, that is on par with saying, oh, Beethoven, he just wrote symphonies. Because A, no, he wrote many things other than symphonies, and B, what the hell is wrong with writing symphonies, right? I mean, what's wrong with bubblegum? It's legitimate music. So, yeah, that's a nonsense criticism. Nonsense criticism number two. Ooh, the Monkees, they didn't play their own instruments. It's like, oh, Jesus. First off, on many of their records, yes, they did play their own instruments. Second off, the bulk of their music was recorded in the mid to late 60s when, frankly, nobody was playing their own instruments. This was a common occurrence in the recording industry of the time, and frankly still is today. Please tell me that you're not laboring under the mistaken impression that that's John Lennon and George Harrison sawing away on cellos in the background of Eleanor Rigby. I mean, come on. All bands used to greater and lesser degrees studio musicians to fill out what they did. And there were many bands that relied almost exclusively on studio musicians, even though they were They were a live performing act. And here I'm thinking of the Beach Boys. The Beach Boys were a touring, performing group that after their first couple, three albums, largely did not record their own music in the studio. They used the Wrecking Crew. Come on. Everybody did. You listen to an album that's recorded in 1966, 1967, 1968, and chances are good that's Hal Blaine playing those drums. That's Carol Kay playing that bass. That's Glenn Campbell playing that guitar. I mean, these were musicians who played on everybody's stuff, not just the Monkees. So, yeah, stupid nonsense criticism number two. The nonsense criticism, though, that really drives me up the tree is, oh, they were manufactured. They were the prefab four. It's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Every band in the existence throughout human civilization, every band is manufactured. Every band is manufactured. Bands do not sprout organically from the soil like mushrooms after a strong rain. Every band is manufactured. Every band is formed by, you've got a kernel of a central nub of people, or perhaps even just one person with a creative vision, and that person or those people then go out and find complementary musicians to help them complete the vision. Every band has auditions. Every band has tryouts. Every band has people who are brought in because of what they add to the group. They're all manufactured. The only difference here is that part of the decision-making process that went into who was in the band and who wasn't they were decisions that were driven by the needs of the television show. They wanted guys who were photogenic, telegenic. They wanted guys who could engage in improvisational comedy. These are factors that don't normally come into play when it comes to filling out your band roster. But that did not mean that they were fundamentally different. Every band is manufactured. Every band is prefabricated. Give me a break. So the criticisms that I hear the most commonly against the validity of the music of the Monkees, I think are nonsense bullshit criticisms. So we just get rid of that. There's a lot of really good music here if you just open up your ears and listen for it. And we are going to talk about that good music. We are going to rank these albums. Before we get into the album ranking, though, very quickly, the subjectivity notice. There is no such thing as objectively good or objectively bad music. The aesthetic experience is, by definition, innately subjective. There is no objectively good or bad art. There is only art that I like versus art that I do not like. There will be decisions that I've made in my ranking that you disagree with, and that's fine. Feel free to leave a comment below to tell me at what points you disagree with what I say, and that's cool. I enjoy having that conversation. Talking about art that you like with other people who like the same type of art is always a fun, engaging, and instructive conversation. As long as nobody goes into it thinking, ooh, no, that's objectively better. No such thing. We also need to talk about the ground rules. Here at Pop and X Music, when we rank albums by an artist, we rank original studio albums that have as their primary purpose being a collection of songs. So original, no compilations. We're not doing any of the 1,001 different box sets that are available out there of Monkees music. Studio, we're not doing any of the live albums. Although I do strongly recommend you track down the 1967 concert album and listen to it. Oh man, these guys, they were underrated as performers. By all of those people who said, ooh, they're manufactured and they don't play their own instruments. Yeah, listen to the concert. Tell me that they're not playing their own instruments. What was... Oh... Albums of decent length, so we're not worried about EPs, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. And then albums that have as their primary purpose being an album. This is my awkwardly phrased rule that allows me to exclude things like Christmas albums. So we're not going to talk about their Christmas album, even though it's just a peachy keen fine Christmas album. This also is the criterion that I use to eliminate soundtracks from contention. And here's where we've got an issue. We've got an album that uncomfortably butts up against both of these. It's the soundtrack to the movie Head. It's not really the soundtrack. Okay, that's the thing. It's the album Head that has music from the movie Head, which, by the way, I strongly recommend you watch if you've never seen it before. It's a fantastic movie. But it's not a true soundtrack. It's not the score that accompanies the movie. It's just the original Monkees songs that are featured in the movie. The problem is there are only 6 songs on here. The album is fleshed out to album length by including a lot of dialogue scenes from the movie. And that means if we strip all that stuff away, we're left with an EP. We've got 6 songs here. So I'm not excluding it because it's a soundtrack. I'm excluding Head because it's an EP. That being said, I think that Head is well worth tracking down and listen to if you've never listened to it, particularly if you've never seen the movie, if you don't know anything about this music. Oh my God, these songs are fantastic. The Porpoise song is, if I'm generating my list of top 10 all-time Monkees tracks, Porpoise song is going to be in the top 5, definitely, and it's a contender for number 1. It is a brilliant piece of music. There's really only, of the 6 songs, there's only one that I'm lukewarm towards, and that's Daddy's Song, which is the Nielsen song in the bunch, and I'm not a big fan of Harry Nielsen. I'm sorry. I strongly recommend that you get it. If I included it, it would be way up toward the top of the list. If you've watched any of my prior videos, you know that I evaluate albums by grading them. C is average, B is strong or recommended, D is not recommended, A is very strongly recommended, F is very strongly not recommended. And this is very definitely an A+ album. I very strongly recommend it because of these 6 songs. It's not fair to put to stack up against the rest of the albums because it is so focused. If we just look at the 6 songs, if we look at the whole thing and we start factoring in the entertainment value and musical value of the dialogue bits, then we're not being fair to the album because now it's sinking like a stone in the ratings, and it actually deserves to be higher. So it's a problematic album. So we're not including Head, which leaves us with 11 albums to rank. Ready? Okay. Coming in at number 11, the absolute bottom feeder here is the only album that gets a bad grade. I've given this one a D. I strongly recommend you stay away from this thing. It is, it's not cover your ears horrible. It's just not good. And that is 1970s Changes. As you can see, by this point, the Monkees are no longer the Monkees. It's Peter and Mike have both left the group by this point, and it's just Mickey and Davy. And while I have great respect for both Mickey and Davy, no, they are not the Monkees. I've got my list of pros and cons over here on my screen, and the best positive thing I can say about Changes is at least it isn't a double album. I have nothing positive to say about Changes. It's a stinker. D. Number 11, Changes. Okay, number 10 is the album that frequently appears on the bottom of the list of these things, and it is 1987's there's a market out there for the Monkees. Let's get together and put out an album. 1987's Pool It. Um, and I will be honest, I avoided listening to this thing as long as I possibly could. Of the albums on the list, it's the one that I'm the least familiar with. Of the albums on the list, it's the one that I heard for the first time most recently. And I will be completely brutally honest. The first time I listened to this was when I first started making the plans to do this video about 4 weeks ago. I realized I couldn't go any further as I was looking at these albums and starting to pit them against one another, and the laborious process, the time intensive research and development phase that goes into any Papa Nick's music video, which is mostly me sitting listening to music. But I realized I had to listen to Pull It. I had put it off as long as I could. And as far as negative things to say about the album, this album is 1987, okay? Every negative thing you could think of to say about music in 1987 applies to Pull It. It screams 1987. It screams parachute pants and members only jackets pushed up to the elbows, and oh gosh, it is not a pretty listen. That being said, I was very pleasantly surprised with two songs on here, and they're both Peter's songs. First is the song that he wrote that's included on this album, which is Gettin' In, which I think is a very good little song. I think Peter is very underrated as a songwriter. He wrote a lot of really good stuff, and I think if I've got a criticism of the recorded output of the Monkees in general, it's that Peter isn't given enough of a seat at the table. I think Peter had a lot more that he could have brought. And this album is a very shining example. If it weren't for the two Peter songs on there, this would be down in D territory. But Gettin' In is one. The other is Since You Went Away, which I love. It's I think of these songs as songs like Since You Went Away as anti-breakup songs. These are the songs that are, oh, my baby done left me. Oh, she's been gone for a week now. And that means, oh my God, I can actually smell flowers now. And oh, I can hear the songs of the birds. And oh, life is so much better. Oh, I love these songs. The first one that I could remember that made an impact on me was Roy Clark's classic Thank God and Greyhound, right? I mean, just, oh, I've done everything I can do for you, and now you've left me, and thank God and Greyhound, you're gone. I mean, and Since You Went Away is one of those songs. I mean, it's upbeat. It's an interesting vocal by Peter. There's some vocal processing going on there, but it's a great song. I love that song. It hands down my favorite song on the album. And I think it is, if I'm making my list of top 10 Monkees songs, it's not in danger of cracking that. If I'm making my list of top 50, Since You Went Away, it's going to be on that list. Apart from those two songs, Pull It, no. We'll let Pull It go. On the basis of those two songs, I'm giving it a C-. My next two albums, I'm going to go ahead and knock out at the same time. They've got exactly the same grade. They both shake out pretty much. It's not quite a tie, but it might as well be. Number 9, I have 1969's Instant Replay. And number 8, I've got 1969's The Monkees Present. Instant Replay was released February of 69. Monkees Present was released October of 69. As you could tell from the covers, Peter has left the group at this point. The show was canceled. Head was released and flopped. They had done a TV special, 33 1/3 revolutions per monkey, that was a disaster. And so they were definitely on the downhill slide at this point. And both of these albums have an interesting mix of old stuff that was recorded in original Kirshner era sessions from 66, late 66, along with some newer stuff that they were working on individually. By this point, they weren't working as a band. Mike was off doing his stuff, and Mickey was off doing his stuff, and Davey was off doing his stuff, and then they'd come together and they'd cobble together an album based on the work that they had done individually. And there are good songs on both of these albums. Instant Replay has While I Cry, which is one of my favorite Mike Nesmith Monkees songs. It's got I Won't Be the Same Without Her and Through the Looking Glass, which were older tunes that were dusted off and polished up for the album. The Monkees Present has two really good current Mike songs, Good Clean Fun and Listen to the Band. It's got one of Mickey's better songs, Mommy and Daddy. So there's some good things on these two albums, and there's a lot of nothing to write home about on these two albums. So if I could compile them together and then edit out the lesser stuff, just take the highlights of both albums and put them together, I'd have a good strong B album. As it is, I've got two mediocre C albums here. Number 9, Instant Replay. Number 8, The Monkees Present. Okay, from here on out, we're in solid B territory. Number 7, an album that I think most Monkees fans will rank higher than I have it ranked. For whatever reason, it just has never connected with me personally. And that is 1968's The Birds, the Bees, and the Monkees. There is some really good stuff on here. One of my, you're going to hear me say a lot, one of my favorite Mike tunes. I am a huge fan of Mike Nesmith, so yeah, I tend to like his stuff. And Tapioca Tundra is the Mike standout on this album. It's a fantastic song. It's surreal, but it's also it's just, I love it defies description. We also, this is the album that has Daydream Believer on it for those of you who really want the hits, and it's got a song that has always appealed to me, and I cannot explain why. P.O. Box 9847. I love that song. As far as downside, there's a lot of music on here that just doesn't grab me. Zor and Zam. This is the album that has the weaker Mike songs on it. Righting Wrongs has never. I've never connected to that one. Mostly though, my problem with the Birds, the Bees, and the Monkees is that there's no Peter on this album. He's on the cover. He's on the back. He's got his picture there, and he's got his autograph on it. But there's no Peter. No Peter songs. There's no Peter performances. He was recording stuff, but the stuff that he brought, the other guys didn't think belonged on the record. And I have heard the stuff that he brought on compilations, and it deserved to be on the record. So part of my reaction to the Birds, the Bees, and the Monkees is that Peter should have been given a seat at that table, which is not really the fault of the album. It's que sera, sera. Okay, I give Birds, the Bees, and the Monkees a B. Birds, Bees, B. Don't say we don't do subtle humor here at Pop and X Music. So subtle, it's not even funny. From here on out, we're in A territory. So this is all heartily recommended. You can't go wrong with any of these. Good stuff. Coming in at number 6. Number 6, we have 1967's More of the Monkees. This is the second album that they released. It is the second album of what I think of as the Kirshner era. when the band first started, Don Kirshner was in control. I'm doing my best not to get into the story of the Monkees, but Don Kirshner was hired to be in charge of the music, while the producers of the show were taking care of the show. Right. So Don Kirshner was overseeing the recording of the music. He was picking which song would be released as singles. He was picking the songs that would go on the albums. He was picking the songs that would be featured in the TV show, and that kind of thing. He was in charge of the music. And this is the second of the 2 albums that Kirshner was in charge of. As a result, it's got a lot of hits on it. It's got I'm a Believer. It's got Mary Mary. It's got She. I like She. That's a great song. It's got Sometime in the Morning, which I think is just a beautiful little ballad. More importantly, it's got that Kirshner sound to it. Don Kirshner was known as the man with the golden ear. He was the man who, I'm roughly paraphrasing Peter here, in an interview where he was explaining the appeal of, or the success of Don Kirshner, that he was a man who firmly had his finger on the pulse of what a 12-year-old girl would like. And he meant that both in the sense of he was an accurate predictor of what would be commercially successful, but also that he had the intellectual and emotional maturity of a 12-year-old. So, yeah, thank you, Peter, for that. Kirshner knew what would be a hit based on what it sounded like, right? And More of the Monkees has that sound. So if you're thinking of the Monkees, and if your impression of the Monkees is the radio stuff, Last Train to Clarksville, and I'm a Believer, and She, and I'm trying to blanking here as I'm trying to think of others, Sweet Young Thing, if that's what you think of when you think of the Monkees, then you're going to like More of the Monkees. It's got plenty of that. It's got plenty of that Kirshner commerciality to it. As far as criticisms that I would have, first, it's got plenty of that Kirshner commerciality to it. A lot of the songs sound the same, even if they're different songs, because they've all been produced under the iron thumb of Don Kirshner. The other problem I have is that in the albums that they did prior to the first 4 albums that they did, each album had what today I'm going to call filler. Normally, when I talk about filler, a filler song is a song that's just not quite up to the standard of the rest of the album. It seems like it was tacked in so that you would have a full-length album. Fillers, to my ear, typically are the songs that make you think that this artist wasn't ready to record that album. In this context, this is true of these tracks, but these are also tracks that are not just, seriously, you had to include that, but are actually, oh my God, what the hell were you thinking that you included this? It's not just something better could have been in that slot. It's that this is actively working against the rest of the record, okay? And the super antimatter filler on More of the Monkees is Your Auntie Griselda. And it hurts me that it's a Peter song. Peter sings it. He wasn't responsible for creating that piece of garbage. Your Auntie Griselda is one of these that you listen to the first time and you think, wow, that's weird. Maybe there's comic value in this. And so you listen to it again and you think, oh, man, that's weird. Then you listen to it a third time and it's like, huh, what the? And then you never want to listen to it again, right? I mean, it gets old really, really quickly. As much as I love Peter, man, we need to nip this thing off. Ugh, Your Auntie Griselda is... No. And it's dragging the album down. Okay. Number 5. Now, this album, I think among most fans, is criminally underrated. I've got it at number 5. Most of the ranking videos that I've watched have it down in the bottom. It's like, 10, 9, 10. It's in that neighborhood somewhere. And I just think that's unfair. I think it is a really good album. And that is 1996's Justice. Or Just Us, however you want to say it. I liked Justice. I liked it when it first came out, because you better believe I snapped up a copy of this thing as soon as I could. I liked the songs on it. I think there are some really good songs on here. I think Oh What a Night is fantastic. I didn't know Davey could write like that. And You and I is a great song. Admiral Mike is a great... there's a lot of really good stuff on here. There is the stuff that is not as good is not bad. It's just not as good. Okay? The quality of the songwriting could be better. I will say that. Regional Girl is not a bad song. It could be better. There are very few songs on it that I don't think are up to snuff. And really the only song that makes me cringe when I hear it is not because of the quality of the song. It's because of the type of song that is. It's my life, and I can do it. Oh, I hate that kind of song. I hate that kind of cheerleading, pull myself up by my bootstraps kind of a song. So that song's a turd burger. But that's just because it's the kind of song that it is. It's not anything about the execution of the song. The song itself sounds fine. If I could just not listen to the lyrics, I'm actually going to enjoy it. And when I think about the album, the thing that impresses me isn't necessarily the songwriting, it's the sound of it. I think it sounds good. It's technically produced by the Monkees, right? It's called Justice because it's just them, right? They wrote all the songs themselves. They're playing every single stinking note. The only album where they did that. We'll talk about Headquarters later. Hold your horses, young man. So it's the only album where they played all the instruments. They arranged all of the songs, and they oversaw the recording process. But really, Mike produced the album. Mike did most of the mixing. The other three were off doing the nostalgia tours that they started doing in 1986 that frankly Mickey is still doing. And while they were off doing tours, Mike was building the album. But still, it's a group effort, and it sounds good. And it sounds good, I think, because Mike had his thumb on the scales as the thing was being put together. And by this point, Mike had done enough work on his own that he knew how to produce albums. And it sounds good. I love the way this album sounds. The criticisms that I have mostly have to do with some of the songwriting is weak, and I don't know that we really needed another version of Circle Sky. I like this version of Circle Sky. I don't think it's significantly better than the version that appeared on Head. I definitely don't think it is superior to the live version that they originally recorded for Head. Off the top of my head, I don't remember if the original album of Head included the live album, the live version of the song that they recorded for the movie, or the studio version that was actually used in the movie. I'll have an explanatory note down here saying which one it was that was on the album. But in the ranking of Circle Sky versions, that original live version is the best. The Justice version is next, and then the studio version that was used in the movie is third. But still, criticism remains. I don't know that we needed this next version of Circle Sky. Man. Okay. Justice. Good solid A record, I think. Number 4, another good solid A record, and this is the one that started it all. It's 1966's The Monkees. This is The Monkees. That's my note. right there. This is the Monkees. If you're thinking about the Monkees, you're thinking about stuff off of this album. This is Last Train to Clarksville and the theme to the show and Sweet Young Thing and Papa Jean's Blues. It's just a lot of good, solid pop on this album, and all of it has that, Don Kirshner sound. And if you like the Don Kirshner sound, you're going to love this album. I've really only got two criticisms of this. Criticism number one is that Don Kirshner sound. I can't really fault it. I mean, it sounds more commercially consumable than the later albums do. Up to you whether that's a valid criticism or not. Most days I don't know that it actually is. And then the second is the filler bit. Gonna Buy Me a Dog. The first time you hear it, you think to yourself, the first time I heard it, I thought to myself, what the hell? Where did that come from? And then I listened to it again and realized that there's a lot of chatter going on between Mickey and Davy. And then I listened to it carefully to listen to that chatter, and that chatter is gold. That's comedy gold going on in there. And I'm not talking about the scripted bits. I'm talking about them, at one point, Mickey says, "Don't ruin my song," and Davy's response is, "Your song was ruined before it was wrote." Anyway, yeah, it was a ruined song before they ever started recording it, because it's a crap song, and it's overall a crap performance that is only saved by Mickey and Davy mugging for the mic, and that gets old real quick. So, yeah, Gonna Buy Me a Dog. No, I'll take a hard pass on that. Rest of the album gets a good strong thumbs up. Okay, from here on, my top three are all solid A pluses. They all have good strong arguments for being perfect albums. I think one of them has the strongest and one of them has the weakest, but I think the argument can be made for all three of them. Coming in at number 3, this is the album that, of the three, I think has the strongest argument for being considered a perfect album. And that is 2016's Good Times. I love this album. When I first heard, 2015 maybe, that the Monkees were planning to release a new album, my very first thought was, ooh. Like, oh, do you think that's wise? I mean, y'all are doing decent on the nostalgia circuit here. I mean, do you really? Ooh, ooh. I had enjoyed Justice. Okay, I thought that was a great album when it was released, but it did not do well. I'm one of 10 people, it seems, who really liked that album. Pool It was, everybody agreed that was a steaming pile of dog shit. So I mean, it's like, do you really want to do this? But then I read a little further and saw that this album was going to be produced by Adam Schlesinger. Now, if you don't know who Adam Schlesinger is, first off, shame on you, because you need to know who Adam Schlesinger is. Adam Schlesinger was a member of the group Fountains of Wayne. Stacy's mom has got it going on. You know Stacy's mom. Adam Schlesinger wrote Stacy's mom. Adam Schlesinger is one of the two songwriters for Fountains of Wayne. He's also the bassist. He plays the keyboards. He is a primary producer for the band. I mean, he's jack of all trades for Fountains of Wayne. He wrote the title song from the Tom Hanks movie That Thing You Do, had a pretty good sized hit with that. He had worked as a producer with America on a compilation that they were doing that had some new material on it, and he produced that for America, and it was critically praised. he it was an immensely talented man, and easily in my top 5 of performers, writers that I admire, that I look up to. He passed away early in the COVID pandemic, April of that year, April of 2020. And it was of all of the people, of all of the celebrities who died of COVID, that was the one that had the strongest impact on me. That was the one that even now when I think about it, I start to choke up a little bit, because he had so much ahead of him, and he had done so much. And what he had done just made me want what he was going to do that much more. Anyway, excuse me. As soon as I heard that Adam Schlesinger was attached to Good Times, okay, I was on board. I had faith in Adam, and I knew it was going to be good. And it was. Oh my God, is this a good album? Like I said, I think we've got a good argument here that it's a perfect album. It has a lot of very strong songs, some of which are songs that the backing tracks were originally recorded back in the '67 heyday, the time period when the Monkees were in control of the recording process. They just weren't necessarily doing all the recording themselves. Songs like the title track, Good Times, was a Nielsen song that they recorded. That is Mike playing that guitar. That is Peter playing that organ. That's Fast Eddie Ho playing the drums, who was the session drummer that they were working with at the time. Chip Douglas playing the bass. I mean, that's the '60s era of Monkees playing that. And what Adam Schlesinger did was he got those background recordings and he spiffed them up a little bit. He put in some overdubs, and then he brought in the existent Monkees to sing the vocal tracks. But he also recruited songs from contemporary songwriters. Ben Gibbard from Death Cab for Cutie was recruited, contributed the song Me and Magdalena, which is just a wonderful song. Rivers Cuomo from Weezer contributed She Makes Me Laugh, wonderful song. Adam Schlesinger himself contributed Our Own World, wonderful song. So they're bringing in these, recent songwriters, current songwriters, to write songs for the Monkees. And the Monkees themselves did some writing. Mike's got a song on here, I Know What I Know, which is just a beautiful little ballad. This is a really good song. This is a really good album. The weaknesses that this album has are weaknesses that I don't know are fixable. And that is, if you're going to include Davey on this, and they made the decision, they wanted to include Davey, which I think spoke well of the group. Davey had died a few years prior to making this album, so if you're going to include Davey, that means you're pretty much limited to going into the archives to find something that hasn't been released and polishing it up a little bit. And they did that. They got Love to Love, which was written by Neil Diamond. And the performance is good. Davey's vocal on it is good. It's just not one of Neil Diamond's better songs, right? It's a mediocre song. It's a good performance, but it's a mediocre song. Peter's songs are mediocre. They're performed well, but they're mediocre. And Peter was, I did not realize at the time, getting close to the end of his mortal coil. So I don't know that there was much more that you could have expected from Peter at the time. With that in mind, yeah, I think Good Times has the best argument for being perfect. I think the thing that could have been done to make it better would have been impossible to do. Therefore, it's not fair to hold that against the album as a criticism. But overall, A plus, very hearty, strong thumbs up. Oh man, I love this album. Coming in at number 2 is 1967's. See, those of you who know the discography, you know I've only got 2 records left. And you know they were both released in 1967. So you don't know which of the... Okay, I'll stop teasing you. Number 2, I've got May 1967 release of Headquarters. Headquarters is the first album that the Monkees recorded after they wrested control of the music from Kirshner. And they were determined, as Mickey Dolenz said in an interview, to play every stinking note on the record. Unfortunately, as Peter Tork said in an interview once, they weren't ready. Headquarters is a good album, don't get me wrong. They were ready to perform. Yes, they had been performing. They had been touring. They had been world touring. I mean, they were big stuff. Okay, they could get out on stage and they could play, and it sounded good. Like I said earlier, track down that 1967 concert album and listen to it. It's good. They were good. They were a good band. But being good with the energy of a live performance and being good with the precision of a studio performance are two different things. And they weren't quite yet good enough to have that precision. It's also problematic that they wanted to play all of the music, but even then they didn't do it. And I'm not just saying, ooh, they had to bring in a guy to play the French horn. I'm saying they depended on Chip Douglas, the producer that they picked, to fill out the sound. Which is why when I was talking about Justice, I said, yeah, Justice was the only album where it's just the Monkees playing. Because here on Headquarters, yeah, that is Mike playing all those guitars. And yeah, that is Peter playing most of those keyboards. Mike's doing a little bit of keyboard work. Yeah, that is Mickey playing those drums. Yeah, that is Davey shaking those maracas. And yeah, that's Chip Douglas playing that bass. That's not Peter playing that bass. So Headquarters is a true Monkees album. Don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that there's a fault here because the Monkees aren't playing their instruments. I'm not making that bullshit criticism. I'm just saying they still needed help. And because they still needed help, or the fact that they still needed help means that the album itself is not as polished as it could have been. The performances are uneven, particularly the drumming performances. I hate to pick on Mickey because at this point, Mickey has gone from being a person who didn't even know how to hold a drumstick. I mean, literally, Peter had to show Mickey how to mime a basic hi-hat snare drum pattern so that they could mime a performance of one of the songs as they were setting up the TV show. He knew nothing about the drums. And he went from that here about a year later to being a solid touring rock show drummer. I mean, that's an impressive turnaround. But he wasn't yet an impressive studio drummer. By the time they were making Justice, he was impressive. He was an impressive studio drummer. At this point, not quite there yet. But there's a lot of really good music on here. Some of my favorite Mike songs are on here. You Told Me, Sunny Girlfriend, You Just May Be the One. One of Peter's best songs is on here, For Pete's Sake, which was used as the closing credits theme on the TV show in the second season. Mickey's best composition, hands down, Randy Scouse Git, is on here. I mean, there's a lot of really good music on this album. As far as the songwriting goes, there aren't any bad ones. The only problems we've got here, the performance, like I've been talking about, is a little uneven. But more importantly, the filler bits are just, for the love of God, stop doing this. And we got two of them on here, Zilch and Band 6, which are just, Band 6 is a complete waste of space. I mean, you could have just left those grooves empty and Needle could just segue straight into the next song, and that alone would improve this album. The fact that I can make that kind of judgment tells me that this is not a perfect album. There are some people who that's not going to be important to, so they're going to think it's perfect. For me, no. But still, Headquarters, fantastic album. And considering that these guys had never even met each other about a year prior to the release of this album, and at this point they're able to work this well together, it's amazing what they were able to accomplish. But I don't want to get into the Monkees story here. Which leaves us with number one, the last man standing. And number one album is the November 1967 release, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Jones Limited. I adore this album. This is, hands down, easily in a runaway, my favorite Monkees album. It's got, I think, pound for pound, the best songwriting. Not including Head. Head, like I said, we've only got 6 songs on there, so it's not fair. They've already culled out the weaker points there. On Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Jones Limited, really I've only got 2 things that I would cull if I could. One is the filler. Peter Percival Patterson's Pet Pig Porky is the kind of thing that you listen to once and you think, okay, yeah, fine, and then, oh, for the love of God, just get on to the next song. The other song I would lose is the token Harry Nilsson song. The Monkees were big fans of and friends with Harry Nilsson, especially Mickey Dolenz. Mickey Dolenz and Harry Nilsson were drinking buddies, and so it makes sense that there's going to be Harry Nilsson songs on here. And as I said earlier, I mean, no offense, Harry, but I'm not a fan of Harry Nilsson as a songwriter. I can't think of any songs that he's written that I like, and I can think of several. There's a Coconut song in particular that he's written that just actively make me want to throw myself off of the nearest high building. The song that he wrote here that's the stink bomb is Cuddly Toy, which is not just an irritating melody, it's also an offensively irritating lyric if you actually listen to the lyric on that thing. Jesus Christ. So I hate that song. Everything else is fantastic on this album. We've got some of Davy's better songs. She Hangs Out. The lyric on that is flirting with Cuddly Toy, but the performance is very good. It's got some fantastic mic performances. Oh my God, The Door into Summer is it's right up there with the Porpoise song for best song this group ever released, I think. Salesman is great. Don't Call on Me. Oh, I love that song. This is the album that has Pleasant Valley Sunday on it, which is a great song. This album has the Monkees as performers, but not feeling compelled to perform every single stinking note, which means, okay, yeah, Mickey doesn't want to be the drummer. He's not really precise enough to be a good studio drummer, and he's tired of trying to do it, so let's bring in Eddie Ho to play the drums. This is the era where they're recording the music that they pull from for Good Times. And it sounds good. That's still Mike playing the guitar. That's still Peter playing the organ. That's still Chip Douglas playing the bass. That's still Davy shaking those maracas. That's Mickey playing rhythm guitar every once in a while, because before he joined the Monkees, he was a rhythm guitarist for a band. And I don't want to get into the story of the Monkees. This is also the album that introduced, well, I don't know that it introduces, but it's one of the first appearances of the Moog synthesizer. Mickey Dolenz famously was one of the first people to get a Moog synthesizer. And they used it on 2 songs here, one where Mickey plays it and one where they hired a professional to play it. And the song where Mickey plays it, Daily Nightly, just, I mean, smokes that song that has the professional synthesizerist, if that's a word, playing it. It's just a it's a this is a fantastic album. The only thing that's even for a moment making me think it's not a perfect album is that, yeah, it's got a skipper. I skip over Cuddly Toy. I don't skip over Peter Percival Patterson's Pet Pig Porky, because Peter Percival Patterson's Pet Pig Porky is only about 30 seconds long. Maybe a minute. And so, okay, I can grin and bear it. It's not in the time it would take me to get up and either press the button on the CD player or move the needle on my record player, whichever version of it I'm listening to. It's already going to be over, so I just let it run. But apart from those two, this is, oh man, slam dunk, fantastic, overwhelmingly my favorite album of the Monkees. So that's how I would rank the Monkees albums. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Leave me a comment. Let me know. Tell me where I got it right. Tell me where I got it wrong. I always love hearing from you. If you enjoyed the video, please, I would appreciate it if you'd press that like button. If you would enjoy similar discussions in the future, go ahead and click on subscribe. And if you do subscribe, click on the notification bell. It makes a difference for the metrics. I don't understand it, but okay, I don't argue with it either, and I would appreciate it if you would do it. And thanks again for watching, and I hope that the rest of your day is harmonious. See you soon.